above electoral politics. Above electoral politics. Not above the law.
Anything weird?
But in case after case, we are seeing an unaccountable, unethical, conservative majority behaving as if the rules just don't apply to them. They're basing their decisions on politics, not the law, stripping people of their right to abortions, gutting fundamental voting rights laws, expanding gun rights, but denying our children the right to safe schools. And the list goes on and on. Not to mention the very blatant corruption driven by corporate influence. Clarence Thomas alone has given us more than enough proof. These extreme justices are protecting the wealthy, special interest donors of the right wing, not the people of this country that they swore allegiance to. Now, the longer this corruption goes on, the more damage is being done to the public trust. This is not a crisis, not just a crisis, within the judiciary. It's really a crisis of democracy. And the longer we wait,
It's better now.
we must act now, because the longer we wait, the more risk we incur. Court expansion really is a common sense solution. The Supreme Court has been hijacked by Republican extremists, and the only way to restore balance, integrity, and independence is by adding seats. And as my colleagues will point out and have pointed out, Congress has the constitutional authority to expand the number of justices. This is not a decision that we take lightly. You know, I've thought about this a lot in the last few years. We've come to this decision because our current court, it threatens the foundations of our democracy. And so it's our obligation to ensure that all people who enter the judicial system receive a fair and equal treatment. And over the centuries, the American population has grown in both numbers and diversity. Through the Judiciary Act, we can add 4 seats to the bench and restore a Supreme Court that is truly representative of the people. The number of Supreme Court justices have changed 7 times throughout American history. This is not some new radical idea. The Supreme Court must reflect the changing makeup of our country. And what's more, court expansion should only be the beginning. We need to pass the Supreme Court Term Limits and Regular Appointments Act to end undemocratic lifetime tenure. And we need to pass the Supreme Court Ethics Act and the Judicial Ethics Anti-Corruption Act to ensure that justices are working for the people and the people only, not corporations. And we need to formally, yes, investigate the justices who have violated very clearly their principles and their duty to this country. And so I'm not going to stop fighting to expand the court. We're going to win this. We're going to continue to fight to reform our current legal system and ensure justice and equity for all. So I want to thank you all for coming out today, and I want to thank everyone here. And I'll turn it over now to our steadfast, progressive leader, actually the youngest member of the Berkeley City Council, Council Member Robinson. Thank you all again for being here. Thank you for coming to Oakland. This is the righteous and just right of your life.
Good afternoon, Oakland. My name is Rigel Robinson, and I have the honor of serving on the Berkeley City Council. And I'm honored to join you on the Just Majority bus tour because I'm sick of fearing for my friends and my neighbors and my constituents because of the decisions made by an unaccountable and unethical Supreme Court majority. This unaccountable and unethical Supreme Court majority is a threat to bodily autonomy for people all over this country. This unaccountable and unethical Supreme Court majority is in the pocket of the gun lobby and is directly responsible for lives lost on our streets every day. This unaccountable and unethical Supreme Court majority behaves as if the rules don't apply to them and is leaving progressive municipalities like Berkeley and Oakland in the dark. Our checks and balances clearly aren't working. We need real judicial reform. The future of this country, the future for our kids, the future for women, the future for trans Americans, the future for black Americans, the future for immigrant families, a future without gun violence, a future without global warming depends on it. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I am so eager for you to hear from our friends across this vast coalition about why we all believe that the time is now to reform the court. Starting with Lauren Babb, Vice President of Public Affairs for Planned Parenthood Marmonte. Give it up for Lauren.
Thank you, Council Member. My name is Lauren Babb, and I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs for Planned Parenthood Advocates Marmonte. We serve and are the largest Planned Parenthood affiliate in the country, and as you can imagine, I'm a little sensitive about the courts. We are unified in protecting and strengthening equity across this California and across the nation. Planned Parenthood nationally has expressed in a call to reform the courts. We need to expand the courts if we want to protect our rights. It's just that simple. The Supreme Court stripped women, transgender, non-binary people of their rights when they overturned Roe v. Wade. This was an attack at the highest level of government. A federal judge in Texas tried to rule that the FDA was not a thing, and then you know how much fun I had the next day explaining to patients how they still had rights here in California. The courts are causing confusions for people's access to health care and their access to rights. One judge should not decide who has rights and freedoms in this country. We are a democracy, and our democracy depends on the stability of our courts. The restrictions to sexual and reproductive health care have always been about control. This is about power, this is about control, and we need to take that back as the people of America. Everyone should be able to decide about their reproductive lives and future without political interference. And we must rebalance the courts and establish a fair judicial protections that defend our rights and justice for all people. We have an enormous amount of work ahead of us at Planned Parenthood, and I'm up for the task. But I can't do it alone. We have to have leaders like Congresswoman Barbara Lee and the folks standing behind us and beside us to make sure that we are able to protect our rights here and for the future. So thank you for being here today, because it starts with all of us. It starts with doing the right thing. It starts with the courts, and it ends with us demanding our reproductive freedom now and forever. Thank you, and now I have the honor to pass it to Erin McCall.
Hello everyone, my name is Erin McCall, and I'm from California Environmental Voters, and we are here today to talk about expanding the Supreme Court. We are here today because we are facing an existential threat from a radical Supreme Court that is threatening our rights to clean air, to clean water, and to a clean environment. We are here today because every 2 years and every 4 years, the American public comes together for elections to be able to decide what we want to do with our future, to protect these rights and these freedoms and the rights to have clean air and clean water. And the Supreme Court is actively going against voting rights and trying to strip away the protections to make sure that every American is able to vote freely and safely in the United States. We cannot pass environmental laws and environmental protection laws that then are going to be overturned by the Supreme Court. Last year, the Supreme Court went after the Clean Water Act. This year, they're going after the Clean Air Act, and they're going after more more rights. Next year, when it comes to the ability for the EPA to do things like regulate corporate polluters. It is vital that we expand and rebalance the court. It is vital that California leaders in Congress and the Senate also join on this legislation as co-sponsors, and it is vital the folks watching at home call their representatives and demand they do the same. We cannot do this without you. It is urgent. Everything is on the line, and this is our one opportunity to rebalance the court and ensure your rights to clean air, clean water, the right to vote, the right to privacy, the right to abortions, the right to trans life and to live how you are and who you are. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry, I was so excited. I want to introduce my friend Nancy Latham to come on up from Indivisible.
Hi, my name is Nancy Latham, and I'm on the leadership team at Indivisible East Bay. I'm so glad to be here in community with all of you. I know that if you're here, you care deeply about justice, and that means I'm surrounded by family. There are incidents in history that sear themselves in our memories, so that when we heard the news, we remember exactly where we were and exactly what we're doing. 9/11 is like that for a lot of us, and for me, that moment also came when I heard the news about the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I was in a doctor's office, an exam room, waiting for the doctor to show up, killing time listening to NPR, and by the time I heard the story air, the decision had been released several hours earlier, but just in that short span of time, Texas had announced that it was going to implement a voter ID law. They were just waiting in the wings to oppress people, and it took my breath away. And ever since then, that decision from SCOTUS has laid the groundwork for vicious, repeated, systematic attacks on the right to vote. But those attacks don't fall on all of us evenly. They disproportionately harm Black and brown people, people who live on tribal lands, people with disabilities, young people, and poor people. And all of this is entirely by design. We deserve a Supreme Court that will defend our freedoms, our freedom to vote and to have a say in the people who govern in our name, the freedom to decide when and whether to begin families, the freedom to love who we love, read the books that we want to read, and even the freedom to earn enough to put food on the table and be home in time for dinner. We deserve a Supreme Court that defends every freedom for us to thrive. But that's not the Supreme Court we have today. It's captured by the rich. It has a radical agenda to strip away rights from ordinary Americans and hand over more wealth and power to those who are already wealthy and powerful. It doesn't need to be this way. We can rise up together and demand justice. We can hound our members of Congress to tell them how urgent it is to expand and rebalance the court. We can take to the streets. We can spread the word until our friends and families are tired of hearing about it, until expanding the court is common sense and it feels impossible. But as Billie Holiday said, the difficult I'll do right now, the impossible will take a little while. It might take a little while, but together we will win. And I'd like to introduce the Director of Policy and Advocacy for Youth Alive, Gabriel Garcia.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabriel Garcia. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director for Youth Alive. We're Oakland's anchor organization for violence prevention, intervention, and healing. And my job is to educate elected officials about the amazing life-saving work that my coworkers do day in, day out to save lives here in Oakland, as well as about the need to prioritize addressing and reducing violence through a public health approach. We're very proud to have contributed to California's historic investments in violence prevention. With that investment, my coworkers have been able to save even more lives here in Oakland. Last year, 2022, our violence promoters, who use their credibility to mediate conflicts that are likely to become violent, mediated over 250 conflicts last year. Our intervention specialists who go to the hospital bedside of violently injured patients to help jumpstart their mental, physical, and emotional recovery supported over 300 clients last year. And our crisis responders, who reach out to almost every single family in Oakland that loses a loved one to gun violence to navigate them through that darkness, to help them pick up the pieces after unspeakable tragedy, supported over 120 families last year in Oakland. All of that work, while it is necessary and critical, is made exponentially more difficult when we have a Supreme Court that is actively eroding the progress we've made to keep guns out of the streets here in Oakland and throughout California. Regardless of how you feel about the Second Amendment, there are two facts I want to leave you with today. One, gun violence is now the leading cause of death for children in the United States. And two, the more guns we have, the more gun violence goes up. Despite that evidence, congressional gridlock has prevented meaningful federal action on common sense gun policy for decades. That is exacerbated by the fact that we have a Supreme Court with their Bruin decision reducing the power for states to do what they can to make their communities safer. Because of this active Supreme Court, going against the wishes of the majority, going against the wishes of our state here in California, of our community members here in Oakland, all of that life-saving work that my coworkers do is diminished. That is why we need to have meaningful action to reform the Supreme Court. And that is why we are so proud and grateful to have a leader like Congresswoman Barbara Lee representing us in the U.S. Capitol to make sure that my coworkers, the work that they do to risk their lives day in, day out, is being honored. And I ask the federal government to do the same. Honor the work that my coworkers do to save lives on a daily basis. I'm going to pass it back to our Congresswoman Barbara Lee. Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much. I think you made the case. It's very clear. We'll take a couple of questions directly to whoever that you might be. Again, I'm glad so many of you are here today. This really is a step toward protecting our
Is it naive at all to think that that would actually change how laws are passed and how rules are upheld if you were to add judges?
It's not naive. See what's going on right now in terms of corporate influence and the corruption that's taking place. And so expanding the court gives us a possibility, more of a possibility, that we'll have justices who will understand how important it is to uphold the law and to make sure that democracy prevails. And that, I think, is an important step that we have to take. Anybody else would like to respond to that?
I would say that expanding the court is about accountability to the court. There has been a sustained effort over the last 30 years to put corporate friendly justices that would allow corporate leaders to undo laws that are protecting our clean air and clean water. So this action of the balance of the court also depends on a strong president that appoint people who are going to be environmental champions, justice champions, civil rights champions, to make sure to actually hear the cases that are coming forward and then rule in favor of the people. Currently, we're not going to have that. Currently, the Supreme Court is actively signaling and looking for cases to overturn things like Levin versus Virginia. They are actively trying to overturn Roe v. Wade. And so they're on a mission. And so in order to make sure that our basic rights that lawmakers have written are upheld, we also now require a rebalance of the court to do that. So it's vital.
Is there a fear, though, that by having more judges, what if the president that is seated right there appoints more judges favoring that side?
Yeah, this is 7 years. And as you said, there's a lot of rebalancing, so we have to start somewhere. And we have to really begin with the right scale of the court. We're going to have a better, more objective, balanced decision-making process that will begin to restore our democratic rights. Okay. Well, listen, thank you all very much for being here. I want to thank everyone for coming to Oakland, my congressional district, of course, the 12th congressional district, which really understands what democracy is really about and understands how many of these decisions now are rolling back our hard